Welcome to the Complete Streets Commission, June 14th regular commission meeting. Did I start too early? Okay, sorry. Welcome to the Complete Streets Commission's June 14th regular commission meeting. This is a hybrid meeting with commission members, city staff, and members of the public participating in accordance with public health guidelines. Roll call. I would like to introduce Complete Streets Commission members and city staff present. I'm Chair Jackie Sebrian. Commission members present include Brian Altman, Katie Baruzzi, Sally Cole, Lisbeth King, Christopher Coleman, and yes to Ross or no to Ross? No, and no. Okay. City staff present include Kevin Chen and Patrick Palmer. Patrick, would you please provide instructions to the commission and members of the public on how the meeting will proceed?
Yes, and thank you, Chair Sebrian and members of the Complete Streets Commission. Welcome everyone to the June 14th Complete Streets Commission meeting, and thank you all for attending. For members of the public who wish to provide public comment for any item on tonight's agenda, after the chair calls for public comment on that item, our virtual attendees may engage the raised hand feature, or if you are calling in from a landline or a cell phone, you can press *9 to raise your virtual hand. If you are participating in person, please wait for the chair to call your name, and then you can step up to the podium to make your comment. That concludes the instructions, and I return the meeting to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Under reports and announcements, city staff and commission members may communicate general information of interest regarding matters within the jurisdiction of the commission. No commission discussion or action can occur on any of the presented items. Kevin, do you have any reports or announcements?
Yes, I do, Madam Chair. If you can give me 1 second as I'm pulling up the files. So just a quick announcement for a couple items here, both City Council action related. First and foremost, the City Council awarded a construction contract, and this is for the Haven Streetscape project. Some of you might know it from a while ago. Some might be the first time you're hearing about this, but this is basically a what would essentially be kind of a sidewalk slash bike lane gap project. This is on Haven Avenue between kind of next from Marsh to kind of Haven Court, if you will. There's some missing sidewalk gaps as well as bike lane gaps. This project will go in and complete those gaps both at the same time. And tentatively, our construction schedule, we're aiming for mid-summer or so. We just got awarded a contract, so we'll have to go through all the paperwork, but we're aiming for hopefully mid-summer to break ground, and then probably take a few months for the construction to be completed. So certainly stay tuned if you're interested in that project a little bit more. Also, the City Council did adopt a resolution to support the 2023 Southeast San Mateo County Community-Based Transportation Plan. So this is, for those that might not know, this is kind of a CCAG-led effort, essentially looking at some of the, communities around Bellhaven, North Fair Oak, like those kind of areas, looking for opportunities to improve transportation modes. So looking at some of the plans that the cities and the regions have already done, compiling them, and then also making recommendations from a regional standpoint. So this is a regional document. For those of you that might be interested, I'm more than happy to send you the link to kind of browse through if you want to, but a lot of the projects recommended in that document, at least as far as Menlo Park is concerned, are already in our transportation master plan. So it's just another way of reinforcing those projects and allowing us more opportunities to go out there and get grant money for the future. So I'll conclude my announcements. Thank you.
Chair Sebrian, can I ask a clarifying question? Yeah.
Yes, you can.
Kevin, I would love to have that link, the report you just mentioned. And I think it's great that they are affirming the plans that you all are proceeding with on your team. It'd be good to see the whole picture. So thank you.
Does anybody else have any more questions? Under public comment, members of the public may address the Complete Streets Commission on any subject not listed on the agenda. Each speaker may address the commission once under public comment for a limit of 3 minutes. You are not required to provide your name or city of residence, but it is helpful. The commission cannot act on items not listed on the agenda, and therefore the commission cannot respond to non-agenda issues brought up under public comment other than to provide general information. Patrick, can you please call for general public comment?
Thank you, Chair Sebrian. To anyone who might have joined us online, you can either press *9 if you're calling in or just raise your virtual hand. And if you are participating in person, please wait for the chair to call your name and you can step up to the podium to make your comments. That being said, we do not have any comments on the line, so I will return the meeting to the chair.
Thank you, Patrick. Under regular business, the commission considers recommendations from city staff on policy matters or administrative actions that require commission approval. The first regular business item tonight is accept the Complete Streets Commission minutes for May 10th, 2023. Any clarification from the commission before I take public comment? Okay, Patrick, can you please call for public comments on this item?
Yes, thank you, Chair. If you have a public comment, please just raise your virtual hand or press *9 if you're calling in. I will return the meeting to the chair.
Thank you. Do I have a motion and second to accept the minutes?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes.
Second? All right. Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Oh, sorry, those aren't my words.
That's okay. I believe I saw all the hands except Commissioner Bruzzi. So great. Thank you very much.
That's all right.
I'll pay better attention. So next also is not mine. Do I not read this next part? E2?
You can announce the agenda item
Okay.
and then hand it over to me.
All right, thanks. E2, adopt resolutions to install no parking zones on Campbell Avenue and Valparaiso Avenue. Staff, Kevin Chen, Senior Transportation Engineer. Can you please introduce the item?
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. If you can give me 1 second here as I pull up the presentation.
You're doing great. You're doing great. Oh, yeah, I want to.
Okay, so I believe at this point, everyone can see the title page of the presentation.
Yes, we
Correct.
can see it.
Great, thank you very much. So good evening, everyone. Kevin Chen, Senior Transportation Engineer with the City of Menlo Park. We're here tonight with a request to approve some parking removals, which is to know, not the first time for the commission to hear an item of this this type of scale. So certainly I'm gonna, for the benefit of the members in the public as well as members in on Zoom, staff will go over a presentation. I'll try to make it as quick as possible. The commission will then ask if any questions, clarifying questions for the item. We'll go through sort of a Q&A session, if you will, then open the session up for public comments. We do have some members in the audience that would like to speak. And then of course, then followed by deliberation. So just a quick housekeeping item of the process. So again, tonight's agenda item is to evaluate and request your approval for driveway parking removal. It's just a bit of a background followed by evaluation and recommendation, pretty typical of a project. So in this case, I also want to just kind of quickly highlight the requests that we have received, and then also maybe later on going into some of the details for each location. So as you can see, we have 4 specific locations that we have received requests for, and this is requests that have either come in within the last few months or so. So we're certainly trying our best to kind of go through them one by one.
Kevin?
Yep.
Just quickly, noting that 3 of the requests are close or proximate to other recent requests. Can you maybe point out their location relative to the other requests received on Valpo and University as you go through those?
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
Thank
no,
you.
definitely. Yeah. So
Thank you.
as Vice Chair Cole mentioned, two of the requests that we received, number 2 and number 3 on Valparaiso, they were indeed requests that came in as a result of a previous request that the commission had deliberated on, which was at the corner of Valparaiso and Crane. And then certainly, I believe some of the speakers here tonight were there at that meeting, so they're more than happy to kind of comment on that as well. But yes, certainly that was the case, both on Valparaiso. So location number 1, this is 4085 Campbell Avenue. This is sort of in our industrial area near 101, near kind of the marsh area as well for the point of reference. This is a driveway, that one of 2 driveway that serve the commercial building that you're seeing in the photo to your right. The second location, as you mentioned earlier, is one of 2 on Valparaiso. This is on 737, 739. It's essentially 2 single-family units that are that have a shared driveway. So essentially, the driveway is shared by both units, 737 and 739. And then the other one, a little bit down further to the west, if you will. This is on, the address number is 827 Valparaiso. For both Valparaiso locations, similar to the previous request, Valparaiso as a whole is signed as 30 miles per hour. But because these 2 locations are near school areas, they do have a school zone of 25 miles per hour, which is typically something that we would do near a school frontage.
Kevin, in this photo is 827 the gray house?
Yeah, yes, that's correct. It's the one, the gray house to the left of the driveway. Okay, and this one is the last location. This is near downtown on 1220 University Drive. Some of you might remember a project back in maybe a year or so that is for on University, but on Millie and Rose. So this is a location that is essentially kind of across the street of University. It's a building that is served by both office, so it's kind of a mixed use building, so to speak. There's office uses in the front and then residential units in the back. This one's a little bit unique in the sense that it does serve multiple units, and then the driveway is an exit-only driveway, meaning the entrance is actually a little bit further to the right of the building in this case. So you're looking at the building in front. So as I mentioned, this is one of those projects where we have received a request to evaluate the site distance of the driveway. Typically what that means is that either a resident, or perhaps in this case, if it's an office building, maybe the employee, one of the employees of the building, they're essentially coming out of the driveway, not getting the visibility that they would like to see before they proceed onto the major street. So they're pretty typical of a request generally. And here is right here a table that sort of showcase the sort of the industry standard based on the design speeds, or in this case, the roadway speed. So all 4 locations that we have here are signed 25 miles per hour. Hence, 25 miles per hour is highlighted here. So essentially what we're saying here is that for the site distance, you're really looking at about 155 feet or so. And this is measured basically from the driver that is on the main street to where the driver on the driveway would be. So 155 feet or so. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to make sure that the line of sight, whatever that is, between those 2 people looking at potentially each other, there's nothing that obstructs their point of view. So the next few slides are essentially sort of some pictures of the locations that we have mentioned, just kind of give you a perspective on what people are seeing. In this case, the driver. Typically with images like this, you are essentially pretending to be a driver, which is about 3.5 feet, 4 feet or so above ground. because you're sitting in the car. You're also looking left and looking right, trying to get a perspective of what you are seeing as a driver. So in this case, this is the view that you are keeping in mind that you are essentially 3 feet beyond the edge of the driveway. So if you are sitting in a car, that means the front bumper is about another 5 feet or so in front of you, 5 to 6 feet or so, depending on the type of the car and the size of the car. So that's hopefully gives you a perspective on where the car is relative to the driver, relative to the driveway. So these are the 2 images to the left and to the right of the 4085 Campbell Avenue driveway. Again, this is the one that's serving the commercial building near 101 and Marsh. This is one of the 2 Valparaiso driveway. This is the one where it's shared by 2 single-family units. In this case, we're only looking at the site distance to the left of the driveway, because to the right is actually another driveway for the next unit. So therefore, there is no obstruction there. So essentially, we're looking at the obstruction to the left of the driveway in this case. So as you can see, very similar story here. This is where you're approximately 3 feet away from the curb, and then your viewpoint of the street. What that means essentially is that in order for you to see further, you kind of have to creep up a little bit more. That's essentially what that means. Here is the 827 Valparaiso, slightly better situation here. But we are still looking at a driver that is essentially approximately 3 feet beyond the curb. As you can see in this case, your front bumper would essentially be in the bike lane. Just kind of give you a point of perspective. Looking left, looking right of the driveway, the point of view right there. And then finally, this is the 1220 University Drive. Again, this is the location near downtown, serving both commercial units as well as residential units. Similar to the other Valparaiso locations, in this case, we're only looking at to the left of the driveway and not necessarily to the right, because it's again shared. There's a back-to-back driveway with the building next door. So looking at just the driveway to the left of the driveway. So as I mentioned earlier, this is not new to the commission or to the city council. The city commission for the last couple of years or so have approved projects of similar magnitude, similar scope. One of them was the 660 Robo Avenue. So this is a very almost similar to University, where it's near downtown. It's right next to very close to El Camino Real, sort of frontage to quite a few apartment buildings. So not necessarily single family homes. At that time, the request was coming in to essentially look at the site distance. And after staff's evaluation, staff recommended removal of parking both to the left and to the right of the driveway. After the commission's approval, we did receive an appeal. And in this case, any Menlo Park resident business owners, they do have the right to appeal as long as they submit their official appeal within a 15-day window, which in this case that person did. So we went to the city council for a final deliberation. At that time, staff presented the presentation to the city council, very similar to what staff presented to the commission a few months before that. But in that case, there was a bit more discussion about sort of the intent and the nature of the request. And here I listed some of the major talking points that were discussed during that meeting. And essentially, at the end of the day, the city council did decide to upheld the appeal. And they did also direct the staff to return at a future date for essentially to return with some mitigations and solutions. So basically, some of the main talking points that occurred that evening. One was the nature of the roadway. Robo in this case is a local access road with relatively low speed, low volume. And then, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, it is kind of fronting at the frontage of quite a few apartment buildings. So by nature, there's a bit more parking demand than your typical single family stretches. And then also there was a desire to look at, because of the characteristic of the roadway and the impact something like this would do to parking, there was a desire to to perhaps look at all the streets of similar nature and come up with maybe a more universal approach than just simply doing this one by one and then taking parking as the requests come in. Because I think as the commission have recognized in the past, if we do this for a lot of driveways, we're taking away quite a few parking spaces. And there's certainly some people that might see that as, okay, we really needed that. There are certainly other people that are willing to kind of accept that for having that flexibility, parking flexibility. Specifically for 660 Robo, there was a few cypress trees that was next to the driveway. So one of the conditions that the city council put in at that time was to perhaps remove those trees, go back and reevaluate, and then see what kind of condition that would do. Generally speaking, though, I think the desire is, again, to kind of look at this a little bit more holistically and then go back to the city council with a guideline policies that would really enhance sort of this similar requests moving forward. So, and then later on, you'll see sort of the implication of this decision relative to the 4 requests that we received. So the next few slides are going to be our recommendation and justification for the 4 locations. Again, in the same order that I've been presenting tonight. The first one is 4085 Campbell Avenue, the one that is serving the commercial buildings. As you can see in front of you, the image, we're essentially recommending the removal of 3 parking spaces to the left of the driveway. One of the reasons why this one probably warrants a bit more than your typical locations is because this is also kind of the beginning or the end, depending on how you look at it, of a horizontal curve. So this is sort of a bend in the roadway, if you will. The same level, you're just driving straight, but there is a bend typically, and then the nature of the bend does make it a little bit more difficult for you to see that 155 feet. Also, we do need a bit more room clearance to achieve that 155 feet of sight distance, as opposed to a straight street where it's a little bit easier to achieve that distance. To the right, we're just recommending a single parking removal. And then also just kind of quickly touch upon how the justification of moving this one forward, given the decision that the city council made a couple of months ago. This is a kind of being a commercial area served by, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, a office building that has quite a few employees. Also, it leads into a horizontal curve, which is something that is a little bit more unique than again just a kind of a straight away type of street. So in our recommendation, we do felt like this is something that we want to move forward with that recommendation. The next couple of slides are going to be the Valparaiso requests. The first one is the 737, 739. Again, this is the one serving the 2 single-family units. Here, our recommendation is to remove the 2 spaces to the left of the driveway, or in this case, the west side. Again, relative, kind of speaking in terms of the justification relative to the city council decision, Valparaiso, it is a more highly traveled roadway. It's definitely from a characteristic standpoint, we would classify that as to be a neighborhood avenue, or a more traditional classification that some of you might be aware of would be a kind of a minor arterial. So like I say, a little bit higher speed, granted, in this case, when cruising or when doing drop off and pickup time, we do have that 25 miles per hour zones limit. However, outside of that, it does kind of revert back to 30. So it is higher speed, more volume by nature of the characteristic of the street. So as a result of that, staff is recommending this particular request to move forward as well.
Sorry, can I ask a quick question while this map is up? Sorry, the map before. Can you clarify these 2 spaces are on the left or right side of the driveway, or?
So this would be left of the driveway. So if you're coming out of the driveway, you're looking left.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So this is the other location, 827 Valparaiso. Very similar. There are some existing curbs out there. So our recommendation is to remove the parking spaces on both sides of, like, again, justification being very similar with Valparaiso, the previous Valparaiso locations. So I'm not going to go ahead and repeat myself. The last one is the 1220 University. So we went ahead and did the evaluation. We received a request prior to that March City Council decision. So we were in the process of doing evaluation already. However, given the decision that had occurred from the City Council, while we have conducted the evaluation, we do feel like this one is somewhat similar in character, in nature, roadway characteristic to Robo. So our recommendation is to essentially defer that decision until later on, once we have a chance to fully digest and evaluate the policy that the City Council requested from a citywide standpoint. We would then, whatever this recommendation, we would then roll that into this particular project as well. And the same would be true for all future requests that come in of that similar nature in roadway characteristics. So here's just a quick snapshot of the 4 recommendations that we presented to you tonight. I'm happy to go back to this slide once I'm at the end. And with that, I conclude my presentations and happy to answer any questions.
Kevin, I had a question. Can we go through these one by one
With questions.
with with our questions and concerns, so we can address all the questions and concerns per property at the same time?
Here we go.
Starting with Campbell, my question is, who put in the request for the elimination of these spots?
So this particular request actually came in from the building management. So it's the someone that represents the building management that made the request.
And is the building, the people who occupy the building, is that a daytime operation? And you would say that this vicinity of 4085 is empty in the evening?
Yes, the entire area, this is kind of the Bohannon area. So generally speaking, industrial, more users during the day than nighttime, absolutely.
Because my sense is, not reading into these pictures,
Mhm.
is that maybe they're trying to remove some of the RV parking that's happening at night. And I'm wondering if there's an option where it could be no parking during the day, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., when office workers are going to and from work and might be blocked by a large camper when they're coming or going.
Mhm.
But enabling those people to dwell there in the evening when they need parking.
Yeah, I would say sort of to the question about RV, we do recognize that this area, particularly Campbell's Avenue, does have a few more RV parking than probably other parts of the city. From our perspective, this is strictly a site visibility evaluation. We're not trying to do anything beyond that. So
Totally.
certainly recognizing what you're saying, that the area as a whole, perhaps there's less usage during the nighttime, we can certainly take that as a recommendation. If the commission as a whole felt like that's a sort of a compromise, if you will.
I don't know, is that typical of 6 a.m. or is it 7 to 7? What typically works in an office environment to meet the needs of those workers while still meeting the needs?
Right. We can certainly communicate that with the person that make the request and perhaps come up with a more finite number. But generally speaking, I would say, yeah, between the hours of, maybe 7 to 6 or something like that would probably be adequate, kind of covering your typical work hours.
Thank you. I have no other questions or comments on Campbell.
Okay.
I had a quick question. It was the building owner that submitted this request? Is that
The management company?
management company?
Yeah, I'm not
And,
sure.
like, what was the date? When did they request it?
When did they request it? I believe this came in earlier this year. I have to go back and
Yeah.
fast track the actual month if you're interested.
I think it'd be really cool on these and all proposals to include the requester and the date, because you
Mhm.
guys are super reactive, supportive.
Yeah.
And I think it's good for the community to see like where it's coming from and how quick it is to react. So this one bubbled up, like came in about 4 or 5 months ago, something of that order.
Right, something of that order. Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
And so it goes on to a backlog and you go through the backlog and this month it comes up. Is that how it works?
Yeah. Generally, I think, we transportation department as a whole, we get all sorts of requests. Typically, when it comes to safety related, we typically try to get to those a little bit faster than maybe some that is more of a convenience request.
So this would be considered a safety type of.
Is
because
something
there's a
that we're
line of
looking
sight
into,
type
right?
of-
Yeah.
type of-
Yeah.
Okay.
From a safety perspective.
Okay, when I was there, I visited it 3 or 4 times and the RVs were packed up. So I think we put those red zones in, it's also going to be an enforcement issue as well. Probably.
Right, yeah, and generally speaking, I think we visited the site as well. If the suggestion is again, that's certainly happy to open to entertain that suggestion as well. We're probably just looking at maybe moving some of the cars to a different location. The entire Campbell Avenue is not fully parked in this case. We actually did also evaluate a couple of driveways next to them as well, just making sure that their site distance because of the parking situation there, that they were adequate. But yeah.
Kevin,
Go ahead. No, go ahead. No, I was going to say, I think that what Commissioner King had proposed was to just ask clarifying questions about all 4 in order, maybe. So did you have something to say about Campbell?
Right.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Just while I was looking at the Campbell picture, it sort of connected to the discussion about Roble Avenue and the cypress trees. So in that picture that you had up before on that, I think slide 13, it shows, I guess my question is, when we're evaluating removing parking, it sounds like we are looking at whether they're removing shrubbery that might be in the way, because in that picture, however old it might be, it seems like sometimes that might be part of the sightline problem. And is that part of our evaluation when we look at removing parking?
Yeah, typically so, right? Yeah, typically we'll look at shrubberies that is leading up to the driveway. Of course, any heritage trees, frequency of the trees relative to the street. Those are things we look at, and of course, cars in general. Doesn't really matter if it's an RV or a sedan. If you park there, you typically will block the side view. You might be able to kind of peek through the window, but that's not generally what we're here to achieve. We're trying to make sure that the line of sight is unblocked all the time.
All right, thanks. Does anybody have any more questions about that site?
No.
Okay, I think we can move to the next one.
I kind of did it too fast. Here we go. So this is the 737, 739, the one that's serving 2 housing units. If there's any questions? No? Okay. Sorry.
Question. When I drove up and down that, there was about 6 or 7 other driveways that looked the same to me as that specific one. And they all look like they had line of sight problems. So I assume the request came from one of the owners of the,
That's correct.
and it's a safety issue,
That's correct.
and it came up in the last 3 or 4 months, that type of thing.
Mhm.
What about, so what should be, should we look at the rest of the street as well? Because it looks like there are actually some buildings that have more occupants in them on that same block, for example.
Right.
So like, what guidance? I mean, how should we react to that? I mean, it's great to respond to the individual for sure, right? And
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. I think that's a question that have came up a couple of times from this very commission in the past as well. I think generally speaking, we did get that direction from the city council as part of that Robo Avenue project to really look at this holistically. So I think to answer your question, that would be something that we want to evaluate. It's not just for, local access roads. We kind of want to take a look at this more holistically citywide, looking at the characteristics and come up with maybe a more comprehensive recommendation eventually. Yeah.
So I think the policy would be great, the
Yep.
refinement. I'm wondering if it could be taken a next step and actually create a checklist from it that the public and we could use.
Mhm.
So rather than a policy, just stopping at a policy, to move it all the way to a checklist, like if the street is one of these yellow ones and its speed is 25 and there's bushes and there's blah, blah, blah. And we could iterate that over time. I mean, I think that's one of the observations I had about the Roble
Mhm.
comments of the city, the council was they're actually using a slightly different criteria than we were using. And so that'd be great to feed back onto the checklist and put the checklist up where the public could see what the criteria is and maybe, enter it through that method. So it's almost self-adjudicating.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great recommendation. That is something that we are, we haven't had the time to kind of
Yeah.
comprehensively think about this, but generally speaking, it would probably look something similar to what you described. Yes.
I'm wondering if that could be, something that we could take on in a volunteer way from the city council, from the, Complete Streets Commission is perhaps, a volunteer for like a month or two to try to convert some of these, like these specific to a checklist and just report it back to you or something. Because I know that you guys are busy and this could take a little bit of time, but there's some energy, at least I have some energy to kind of move this towards a checklist type of thing that both, could help with the engagement of the community as well as, speed it up so it's not the back and forth, that type of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's something you guys would be. open
No, I
to.
think that's of course, great suggestion there. I think in this case, there's certainly room for that opportunity as well. I'm thinking maybe like one of the subcommittees that we have going on.
Yeah.
Maybe there's an opportunity for one of the subcommittees to help staff, like you say, maybe develop that first draft, if you will. It is something the city council is looking for staff to do. So that certainly means we do have that guidance from the city council
Maybe
to
as a
want to
separate
explore
item,
this a little
I
bit
could put
further.
together a
but-
Proposal and just mail it to you guys and then we could take the next step and decide what we
Yeah.
want to do. I've got some thoughts about how that might work.
Yeah, I would say we probably want to, so maybe just looking slightly ahead to July, that is a meeting that we want to start talking about our work plan, our annual work plan. So
Okay.
perhaps I think we can have maybe a more in-depth conversation, in general about just kind of commission work plan relative to the city council work plan, but then we can perhaps have a conversation about that, which subcommittee that falls into, that also gives staff a little bit more time to kind of go back and kind of think about how to outline this a little bit better.
Because I'm not a traffic expert, right?
Yeah.
So if I had a checklist, right? So every time I don't, it's like, well, are there bushes or not bushes? Is it 25 or 35? And otherwise it's just, our visual opinions.
Yeah,
And it seems like if we converted some of this stuff to a checklist and then iterated it, and that would be the contribution of the Complete Streets Committee, just to be sure that that checklist is up to date. It's something that we would own.
Yep.
And help facilitate.
Yeah, and I think that's generally the kind of the direction that we were given by the city council as well. I think that
Kevin,
works well.
Oh, sorry, don't interrupt. You go ahead.
Sorry.
Katie, go.
No, I just had a question about the local road safety plan and whether or not we were taking sightline distance policy into account in the local road safety plan, or if we were looking at things like traffic volumes and accident rates.
Certainly accident
And
rates in
if
the
that's-
local safety plan. I think from a sight distance standpoint, the industry standard it is there. The table that I show the commission a little bit earlier, that's sort of the industry standard. I think some of what the city council and maybe perhaps Commissioner Altman alluding to is also sort of beyond just the technical aspect of things as well, and that's more to the nature.
Yeah, no, I guess where I was going with that was if we wanted to prioritize, right now we're being utterly responsive
Mhm.
and we're not necessarily saying, well, which places in the city are we actually having accidents where people are pulling out of driveways and boom, something happens.
Yep.
When I was looking at this, for example, I think I did see an accident in the database at the exact driveway we're talking about in University.
Mhm.
Like the scenario described is one that probably could have been prevented with more sightline. But, you know, since we have that planning process coming up, I wondered, again, not if we could, not to change the sightline thing, but if there's a way to roll some slightly more proactive work on this, or taking places where we suspect accidents are more likely to happen.
Yeah, I think there's definitely an opportunity there for some synergy. I think the local safety plan obviously will be looking at sort of, collision rates citywide, identifying those key hotspots, so to speak, and then ideally, whenever the time comes, that policy that we've been kind of talking about, we still have to kind of think about structurally what that means, how much outreach needs to occur before something can go in, to what distance, like some of the thought process need to go in first, but I definitely recognize the sort of that synergy that Commissioner Baruzzi is talking about between those two efforts. Yeah.
Kind of to that note, for each of these, it would be really like, who asked for it? When did they ask for it? And were there any accidents on 737 Valparaiso in the last year or two?
Okay.
Just as part of the, statistics on a kind of a checklist where it says, there's 5 accidents in the last 2 years or something. Something to provide a little bit of background, but also the sense of the prioritization, why this is a safety issue over something else.
Okay.
Kevin, I was going to ask if we contacted any of the other homeowners to the right and the left of Crane, where it intersects Valpo, to see it, so we're not hand selecting certain driveways that we're doing this for, because I suspect all of them are making this request because of the overflow traffic that they're getting from the medical building
Mhm.
parking. This is not their parking that they're needing in the street, but rather daytime medical workers.
Right. So part of the process for both Valparaiso, we did send out postcards, kind of the standard, where we did the 500-foot radius. So the hospital that you mentioned was indeed part of that group. So they did receive a postcard as well. And similar to, other projects, we had those A-frames out there. So that way the user who may not be a nearby resident, who obviously would not have received a postcard, they would see the posting as well. So we definitely kind of conducted that outreach to make sure that we cover those areas. And I would say sort of, whether or not it's productive to do so, I would say that the 2 Valparaiso requests that we got tonight were kind of the result of, them receiving the postcard for that Valparaiso and Crane project and thus realizing the process and making those requests. So, yeah.
Just to tag on to that. So I know Hugh and Kevin, this is close in our memory, but I think one of the things we learned at Middle Avenue outreach is that it's actually hard to reach. It's easier in some ways to get a postcard to a single family home, a little harder when it's something like a multi-unit apartment building and we're trying to reach the owner, right? Or Rosner House and we're trying to reach the right person within a Rosner House. I don't want to get off track, but I think one thing to think about is since we don't exactly know how many workers in maybe that Menlo Medical area or whatever might be using Valpo for parking, if we just send one postcard to the Menlo Medical Center, we don't know if it's really going to get to someone who can answer that question. So maybe in some of these limited situations, maybe slightly more outreach is necessary, whether that's a phone call to the management office of Menlo Medical to ask, to make sure they know that we're asking for their feedback.
Noted. Yeah.
Does anybody have any more Valparaiso questions? All right, I think we can move to the next one.
Okay, so I skip 827, assuming, but happy to stay here for a little bit in case I'm seeing. Okay. Then this is the last one, 1220 University. Again, this is the one near downtown, an exit only driveway serving office units as well as residential units.
And to note, the parking space we see occupied there is the closest parking space to the exit.
That's correct.
Thank you. Okay.
Does anybody have any questions about this one?
Well, Katie, can you share your information about accidents? And I'd also like to know who put in this request. Was it the apartment building or residents nearby?
Yeah, it's a little tricky, but when I was looking in the Thames database, it looked like right there, when you look, it actually shows you a street view of where the accident happened. And it was somebody who was pulling out of a driveway and trying to make a left turn and had a broadside interaction with another driver. So if it wasn't this driveway, it was the right next to it, but I'm pretty sure it was this one. It was in 2013. I mean, it's happened once. I don't know if that's related. It seems like we would have dealt with it 10 years ago if somebody, but
Right.
yeah.
Okay. And then the request was made, I think.
Yeah, was the request made by the dwellers of the apartment building?
I think similar to Campbell, I believe this is actually a request that came in from either the building management or someone else that essentially has responsibility for the building itself.
Yeah.
I have a
Do they
question.
provide, sorry, just follow. Do they provide parking for their residents? Is there underground parking in that apartment building? Do you know?
There is some underground residential parking, and I believe there is certainly some parking spaces for kind of the office complex as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
Have we had any complaints from anybody about any of these? Sorry, I forgot to ask that earlier. Like, has anybody responded and said, wait, we don't want this to happen?
No, so far we haven't received any negative or positive feedback for that matter.
Okay.
I have one clarifying question about the sort of all of the parking removal questions. And I was looking back at my notes. It seems to me that some few months ago, when we examined one of these things, there was a rationale provided for why these particular parking removals were coming before us, and that it was in fact like we were on our way to doing something like what Commissioner Altman is talking about. And so I guess my question is, for these particular parking things, are these part of that idea where we're sort of giving public comment to these what I'm calling sort of conceptual parking removal ideas? Is that part of this, or is this just how we're still dealing with parking removal while we're working on that thing that we're talking about?
Right. I would say that's certainly sort of the latter, where we will probably continue to take on this type of request on a case-by-case scenario. Of course, taking into account what had happened back in March with the city council, with one eye towards having this more citywide policy for like a more citywide implementation process in the future. Yeah, but for now, we are still taking those requests one by one individually. Something to note would be, all 4 these locations, the request came in before March. So that's just kind of a timeline right there.
Are there any more clarifying questions? Okay. Let me find my, let's see. Patrick, please call for public comments on this item.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Let's see, for those who might have just joined us and are tuning in remotely as attendees, please just use your raised hand feature, or if you're calling in, press *9 if you have a comment about this item. And if you are participating in person, please wait for the chair to call your name and you can step up to the podium to make your comment. I'll wait a moment. Does not look like we have any remote comments, so I will return the meeting back to the chair.
Okay, I do have one card from Robert Jack.
Okay, I appreciate this opportunity to address this issue. I've lived at 827 Valparaiso, which is actually one of 3 townhouses. Mine is the nearest to the street. And I have seen in those years this become more than just a minor artery, I think. There are periods when cars are stacked up for quite a long way. And there is no other corridor that I'm aware of that goes all the way from Alameda de los Pulgas to El Camino with no stop signs and just one traffic light. So people who are going east-west, this has become very popular. Although it's 25 miles an hour posted, a large number of people either are racing through that one light because it's a 3-way light and Menlo School is right there at University. And so they press the accelerator and they go a lot more than 25 miles an hour. Another thing I'd like to clarify is bicyclists come along. You have both a Sacred Heart and Menlo School, and those kids are in a hurry. I want to be able to see them. Now, usually I can see the bicyclists don't come as fast as cars, but it's just one more reason why you need more line of sight there. It's an accident waiting to happen. I think the police reports, I've heard the smashes from my house. As I said, I'm the first townhouse nearest the street, and I hear the crash. And then often I hear the siren of not a policeman coming, but the medics coming. And there was an accident with the victim on the side, bleeding and so forth, taken away in a stretcher. I would like that to be acknowledged, that this is becoming a significant risk of an accident waiting to happen. I don't want to be the cause of it or the victim of it if I get broadsided. So that's my 3 minutes.
You still got one if you, thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Okay, feedback from the commission?
I had a question about Campbell, if we can put that one back up again. The actual photo, though, not the map. And maybe we just take them one by one again and this time give feedback instead of clarifying questions. That's okay. Okay, thank you. The first thing, Kevin, I just want to clarify for members of the public, et cetera, and for the commission as well. I know we've been referencing the standard of the 155 feet, but I just wanted to get your confirmation that that's a design standard. It's not something that is legally required of us, nor do we expect as a city to be providing that at every egress, every driveway.
Right, it's a sort of a industry standard that we typically would reference for a case like this. Yes. Yeah.
So sort of an ideal, but if we do less than the ideal for other reasons, that's like a reasonable.
That's true. Yeah. Sort of
Solution.
Traditionally, we've been kind of using that standard to make our recommendations.
Yeah.
And with the March meeting, essentially, we got the direction to reevaluate. So that would be kind of that whole policy conversation.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. In terms of this one, when I looked at these photos, I had the same thought that Commissioner King raised, which is that parking of that RV, for example, the first space that would be removed if the proposal went through?
That is correct. Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
So I guess sorry, I just wasn't sure whether we needed to remove 3, I guess, is my question there. It's difficult, obviously to be looking at a photo, so I'm trusting you because you went down to the site and I did not. But let's say the RV couldn't park there, right? Is it maybe that one and the one behind it, you know, merits removal, but beyond that, maybe not. Because though I see a curve,
Mhm.
I don't really see a tremendous lack of visibility unless there are sort of two RVs being stacked. And I do think it's important, given the council's conversation, that we consider every parking space removal as, you know, really kick the tires and ask ourselves whether it needs to be removed. So for me, I looked at that. I wasn't sure if you needed to remove 3. And then on the other side, I wasn't sure you needed to remove any at all.
Mhm.
You know, it just, I wasn't sure when I looked right at that photo that there really was an issue with line of sight.
Right. And one thing that I do want to kind of quickly point out before I respond would be, you know, this is a driver that is essentially way out of the driveway already, right? So this is kind of
Okay,
take that into account.
Uh-huh.
Ideally, maybe you don't need to go as far out to get a
okay.
get a
line
clear
of sight.
view.
Mhm.
Right. So in this case, you know, I think that there is a desire to at least demonstrate how far you need to be out of the street before you get a clear side of view. To your point about the 3 spaces to your left, to the left of the driveway, you know, typically when a case like this or when a project like this comes to us, you know, we fully recognize that the type of car that parks there, spacing between cars, et cetera, you may be able to take a peek in between, you know, maybe so kind of the reality of it all versus in our case, we typically, you know, assume that you cannot see as those cars are lining up. And there's really no opportunity for those gaps to occur. So in this case, our recommendation is essentially kind of based on that on that mindset right there. With that being said, we're certainly not opposed to if the commission wants to approve the 3 parking spaces being removed to the left, but then, you know, let's start with 2.
Yeah.
And then communicate that back to the requester, see if that helps with the situation
Yeah.
without removing that 3rd one, and then maybe that 3rd one essentially becomes a kind of a pending based on the first action.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, part of it is that I'm this one, I don't know, and I'm not suggesting it is, but I wouldn't want this request for parking removal to be a proxy for, we don't want RVs to park here, right? So I'm really trying to make sure that there is an inadequate line of sight issue.
Absolutely. Again,
Yeah.
for us, it's not,
Yeah.
it doesn't have anything to do with the type of car. The length, obviously, none of that. It's just a matter of what's in front of you that it's blocking your side of you. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for that. Integrity. The other thing is the one on the right, for example, just in this photo, it is a smaller car. I mean, if an RV were to park there, I could see more of a line of sight issue.
Right. Or
on
if
there.
if you are, say, on the driveway, so that means the front of your car is now 5 feet into the street, you know,
Yeah.
your sight line of sight is probably not as good as this one right here in front of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Those are that's the feedback I had on Campbell, and I defer to the chair if other folks have feedback on Campbell.
I have a couple of questions. Sorry, I should have asked them earlier. What is our, have we even done an average daily traffic count on Campbell? I was looking up, it looked like we had one for Scott, which was higher than I would have necessarily guessed, but I'm curious what the traffic there is like.
I would have to go back and check, but I would be, if I have to say, I probably think we don't have a count there. I could go back and see if there were any particular reason we would have a Campbell count for a project or for other type of request. But just off the top of my head, I don't think we included Campbell as part of our biannual count.
I'm also curious about whether or not the RVs are a relatively recent phenomenon there, because when I go back and look at Street View, it seems like recently, yes, previously, maybe not. And I wonder if that speaks to a change in enforcement policies or a change in homelessness. And if you've checked in with our code enforcement people about, are they aware of this? Like, not like I want to tip them off and harass people who have been living in RVs, but it seems kind of funny to paint a red curb if there's already a blatant violation of our overnight parking law. Which I mean, like, not, if that's sort of a gray zone for law enforcement already, is the red curb going to make a difference?
My understanding is our PD, our co-enforcement, is aware of it. And I would say you're probably right of it being maybe a recent phenomenon, a recent development. But again, in terms of co-enforcement, if there's any violation of co-enforcement, that's typically taken care of by PD and co-enforcement. It's not something that we typically, if we receive a request like this, and after we evaluate what that request was for, and we determine that it was actually a co-violation or potentially a co-violation, we would just send that to our co-enforcement department. Yeah, so it'll be handled separately.
I think there's actually a hydrant in front of that first RV.
That's correct. So that's
So
what
that-
contributed to
that
the
red
existing.
zone looked like it was like just a couple feet. Is that the standard for a hydrant?
I believe it's about, let me see what the existing is. Typically with the hydrant, it's about 15 feet to the left and to the right of the hydrant. And I believe there is some existing red curbs that's already out there.
'Cause-
Yeah.
Yeah, so the red ends right there.
Yeah.
So the red, yeah, so yeah, that's what I was thinking.
I would be curious. I would be curious if the paint had faded, if it needs to be touched up. Do we have actual visual inspection of that?
Yeah, I believe
As
one of the
pertaining to this?
pictures, went out and took a recent photo. So there's this photo right here. You can kind of see the red paint.
Oh, that's
It's fairly obvious that there's red paint there, but we can certainly kind of refresh that just to kind of
What's
reinforce it.
required in front of a hydrant? How many feet?
Typically, I believe is, I have to go back and confirm, but I believe it's 15 feet left and right. It's in the vehicle code.
Yeah.
And also from the look of it, that RV could be pulled forward by at least half of its length. So when we look at that picture of where it's obstructed, it feels like there's still white curb that it could be pulled forward. So on that picture where the cars are, am I imagining that those 3 spaces are basically like from the RV to the truck? Like,
No,
not
from the
this
red
picture.
curb to the truck, yeah. So from the
Oh, right,
beginning,
from-
from the beginning or the end
Got
of the
it.
red curb, that's the parking space number 1.
Okay.
So I'm wondering if a compromise position might be Purcell's comment that maybe, it looks like the hydrant needs more red or cleaner red. So, extend it out 15 feet on either side plus 2 cars. So that's not 3 spaces. That might be a compromise away from 3.
Yeah, because you would think 15 feet, and you can speak to this, would
15
be
feet is
of
a
a
car.
straight
Yeah,
away, and this really, it doesn't even straight until you hit the hydrant. It's
But you would calculate from the center of the hydrant.
15 each way. Right.
Correct.
But even if it's a curve like that,
Mm-hmm.
you couldn't just take 30 on the other side? Okay.
Yeah, so I think point well taken. So what we'll do is we'll just go out there and make sure that if it's not already 15 feet, we'll maximize that. And then whatever the kind of the remaining is, if that becomes 2 spaces, then we'll just take out those 2 spaces. But then again, I think there is a kind of when we were preparing the diagram, we kind of took those into account in terms of, because we're not really looking at, how many we are obviously looking at the existing red curb, but we're looking at it more from what's in front of you blocking you to see that 155 feet or so. So that distance that that distance that we're requesting is kind of that finite number. And so, maybe instead of 30, it'll be 28 because we can extend, 2 existing feet of red curb as a result of the hydrant, but we're still requesting 30. Exactly.
I think it's also fair to note that, in your checklist, that this would be a task item or punch list item that you would request.
That's correct. If there's a hydrant, automatically you get that 15 feet. Yeah. Mhm.
Can I ask one more question connected to this one particularly? So I know earlier, like I like the idea of the kind of hourly restrictions, given that it is mostly business, but I'm also like forgetting that the overnight street parking. And so I don't know if they already can't park overnight on the street, would we be creating a policy to allow a thing that they're not really supposed to be able to do, but isn't really enforced? And so, yeah, I just feel like we're opening up, so that is why but it feels like we've already moved past that because maybe it doesn't need to be Yeah.
It's also
No, I
not
think
on
it's
the
good that you,
agenda.
you brought it up. It sounds like what you're saying, Chair Seaborn, is that we might be creating two different policies on the same street.
So just point of clarification, the overnight no parking is for residential district only. This is not a residential district.
It kind of looks like it is a residential district.
Through the chair, this is Hugh Lauch, Assistant Public Works Director for Transportation. So you don't have an action in front of you tonight to consider time limited parking. So you could give us direction to bring that back. It's not something you could decide tonight.
Okay.
But on the map, Campbell is the same color as College, right? Or same color as Roble, actually.
So we're talking about like the land use, not the street classification. So I recognize what I think you're looking at the street classification.
What I'm looking at the street classification,
Right.
just the colors, which I think is absolutely great.
Right.
Yeah.
So in this case, what I'm referencing is the fact that the overnight parking permit is for residential districts. So like, for example, if you have like single family homes, some multifamily homes. In this case, is what we consider to be a commercial district, where it's all just office buildings or industrial buildings. So the land use is what I'm referencing to relative to whether or not the overnight parking permit or the overnight parking rule applies. Yeah.
Does anybody have any other comments on this one? Because I think we're going to are we going to do a motion for everything all at once at the end? Everything everywhere all at once.
Oh, sorry. Oh, Commissioner Silverstein is on the line. So
Hi, yeah, sorry for being late. I totally got my time zones mixed up, so I was an hour late. But quick question just regarding line of sight and the 155 feet stopping sight distance, which is mentioned in the resolution and the formal rationale for removing any of these parking. How objectively calculatable is that? Is this something where you can take a protractor and formally say that we do or don't have 155 feet objectively, and that is all that matters? Or to what extent is there even a subjectivity assessment around that required sight distance?
yeah, that's a good question. So I would say up until now, everything is, for lack of a better word, purely mathematical. So 155 feet, we can physically go out there and measure that 155 feet from the 2 points relative to the drivers. We can very clearly be out there and objectively point to, here are the things that are creating that obstruction. So in this case, everything that we've been doing thus far has been sort of very methodical in a way that we have 155 feet. That's the minimum requirement. We try to achieve the minimum requirement, and here is what is needed to achieve that.
I'm sorry, can I interrupt? I don't think it's a requirement. Am I wrong about that?
I'm sorry. Yes, yeah, based on the guideline. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's an important point to make.
Yeah.
Commissioner Silverstein, I know you dialed in late, but I think I raised this before. I think it's really important for the public to understand that this is a design standard. It's not an enforced requirement on the city. And there are subjective reasons or contextual reasons why we wouldn't provide it in certain situations, as evinced by the fact that City Council in the March 28th meeting decided not to remove the parking space at Roble.
And so if we then went to remove 2 parking spaces on the left instead of 3, do we know what that would mean in terms of the stopping sight distance? I mean, I'm assuming it would just be, I'm looking at if it's totally proportional, then would it be 2/3 of that?
That's correct. I would say in the simplest term, if we only remove 2 out of the 3, and there is a car parked on that third spot that we're talking about, effectively, you will not have 155 feet of sight distance. And in this case, we are assuming the driver is relatively close to the edge of the driveway curb. So meaning the car at the front bumper itself is already, again, 5 to 6 feet beyond the curb at this point.
So they've already
Versus-
creeped out.
Right, exactly. We're assuming that the car is already creep up a little bit, exactly, to achieve that 155, which is typically what we try to do when we come up with our recommendations.
Not to get too specific, but why are we assuming that the car is creeped up?
Just
I mean, creeped up, but
a
creeped up.
natural behavior versus literally
Okay,
stopping
thank
at
you.
the stop bar.
Okay, appreciate that.
And maybe just to add a logical observation, just if you look at that figure, right, is that it's not that it's 2/3, because you can see if you measure the length of that line, right, it's really, you'll start to see a vehicle when it gets to that first X. So it's, some, we'd have to measure out what it was, but it's some reduction, but it's nowhere near a third.
Right, it's not a
Got it. That's because
a
we
linear
already have
relationship.
a lot of protected space already.
Do we have any more? Does anybody have any more clarifying questions on this one or Valparaiso? Or not clarifying, discussion, comment?
I have a meta comment on Valparaiso.
737.
Go ahead, Commissioner Silverstein.
Yeah, I don't know if this is within the scope of this conversation, but I wasn't as familiar with Valparaiso Avenue before this kind of came to light, and was looking at the avenue kind of through Google Street View on Google Maps, and noticed that there are some driveways there that don't have any parking restriction adjacent to the driveway whatsoever, right? You can park immediately before and immediately after. And there's a bike lane immediately right there, which would essentially make the line of sight be 0 for the bike lane, requiring anyone exiting the driveway to creep out into the bike lane before they get formal line of sight into any cars coming. I don't know if it's within the scope of this conversation to discuss whether or not that is a reasonable thing to exist on a street like this. If someone is really, if we should require at least 3, 4, I don't know what the guidelines would suggest, X feet of red zone, red paint adjacent any given driveway so that people can kind of see safely outward. So I mean, similar to this photo where I imagine that Toyota is not parked immediately adjacent to the driveway itself.
Right, yeah, so Commissioner Silverstein, so we did have that, and I apologize, I wasn't sure when you joined the meeting. So we did have a brief conversation about that. Basically, that is the direction that we received from the city council, is there's a desire to look at this more holistically. So moving forward, one of our tasks would be kind of addressing what you mentioned, obviously Valparaiso, but then more citywide, given the direction that we got as a result of the Robo Avenue item. So certainly, like you say, not necessarily part of this agenda item, but I just wanted you to know that it is something that is in our future scope.
I have a comment on Valpo. Can I proceed? Yeah. Mr. Jack, I want to say that I agree with your description of the conditions on Valpo. I live nearby. My son attended Menlo School for 4 years, and I run on that road about 3 times a week. A couple of thoughts. One is that I think we should take a pause because of the Roblé example that the city council gave us to think about, and say that Valpo is a very different road. As Kevin mentioned, it's highly traveled. I agree that people travel at a high speed. And also the bike lane is a big issue from my personal experience, and I want to explain why. I live on Santa Cruz Avenue, and I have to back out of my driveway several times a day. We don't have parking on Santa Cruz. I'm not worried about ever colliding with a car. I get worried about colliding with a bike. And here's why. So I'm backing out and turning the back of my car to the right. So I can see the cars, but the bikes come faster. They actually come faster. Kids on bikes from Hillview really surprised me how fast they can bike. And I have less visibility to them. So I do think that this photo represents very accurate portrayal of the situation that drivers face as they leave driveways and they don't want to hit bikes, but there's just not enough visibility. So I think this is an issue, and I do support the removal of the parking spaces on Valpo as a result. I think I really appreciate, Kevin, tonight that you've stressed, and also that Commissioner Altman has said he wants to work on this, volunteer time for it, but to stress the need for the holistic policy, because as people have pointed out, we don't want to be sort of removing one parking space at a time. And we know this is an issue along Valpo, as Commissioner Silverstein also observed. That's it.
Are we ready to make a motion?
Does anybody have any comments about university separately? No? Yes.
I did have one. It's okay. Okay, university. So I thought, Kevin, I wanted to emphasize, I thought the comments you made in the staff presentation that showed how the university drive situation equates a bit with the conditions on Roble. I think that is justification for deferring the decision on it. It is similarly positioned to people parking downtown. And I know the folks on Roble said that they got a lot of people parking there who go downtown to work. And I'm sure that's the case as well with the university. That's all.
So university's on pause, right? For us in terms of a recommendation.
I think that's their recommendation and we can agree with it.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe just kind of a nod would be fine, or is there any deviation that the commission as a whole would like to make to the recommendation? If not, then maybe we can just have kind of package it all up and just make one. But if there's any desire to deviate for one of them, then we'll just pull them out and do it one by one. Just maybe just kind of a
Maybe the
straw
only
vote if there's
deviation
any
was the.
I
deviation.
gotta say, I kind of feel like we removed parking spaces right across the street from the university one.
Mhm.
And I'm a little uncomfortable with letting it sit when there's actually been an accident there. And I'm curious about what, it's just, we're gonna not talk to me about this.
So we didn't include a resolution for university. So you can't actually take action on it tonight. It's included because it was one of the ones requested and just to provide full information, but you don't actually have the ability to act on university tonight.
Okay. That's helpful.
Before we take a motion, I just want to add a couple of comments to all of it. And one of them is thank you for including in the presentation the graph that shows sort of how you decide the sight lines, just so that that is clear to people that how we're deciding when parking needs to be removed or not, that there is a reasoning behind it, because I think that has come up before. And so it's nice to include it. I appreciate it. And as one of those bicycles that is zipping along, I will totally admit that I can see all the places where we don't have good line of sight, because those cars' bumpers are partly in the bike lane so that they can figure out if they can turn. And it makes me a little nervous when I go by. So I absolutely agree with how much is going on some of these busier corridors. And so whatever we can do to increase visibility for cars and bikes and pedestrians trying to navigate these spaces, I think it's great. Does somebody have a motion they want to make?
I think Hugh, Transportation Director, Public Works Director, Hugh Louch, asked if there was any deviation to the motions that were drafted. And the only one I think that was suggested was mine, that we remove the 2 spaces rather than the 3 at Campbell. So I don't know if the rest of the commission agrees. Yeah, on the left side.
Didn't we also talk about extending the red curb to be 15 feet from the hydrant, which sounds like a technicality, but like I was actually noticing the lack of 15 feet of red curb on hydrants on Valparaiso too. I feel like that feels like a standard thing we should be doing if we're observing that, right?
Yeah, no, we can certainly do that. So I think to kind of Vice Chair Cole's point is that, and that was kind of what our recommendation was, that, you know, we would approve the 3 spaces tonight, but then we would execute the 2, and then communicate with the requesters, see if that is adequate, and if it's not, then we would then execute that 3rd one. But if they agree that it's, you know, adequate, then we would not execute that 3rd one. That was kind of my recommendation at the beginning. So I don't know if that's what you are thinking as well, or different.
I'm sorry, just to confirm, so we would ask the property manager of that building, the commercial building.
The person that made the request, and then they
But,
would.
I'm sorry, is the process you're suggesting that we would say to them, we have approved 3, but we believe only 2 is necessary, and then they would say back, well, we believe 3 is necessary, and then we'd remove 3? Or would we say, we approved 3, we believe only 2 is necessary, we'd like to remove 2, and 6 months, we'll talk to you in 6 months and see if it's okay?
The latter, right? Maybe
Okay.
not necessarily 6 months, but sometimes we'll pass by, we would try to gather,
Yeah.
or ask them to gather information from their tenants, see how it's doing, and then execute that 3rd one if necessary.
That's what I would
Okay.
like a period of testing it, but that would be my 2 cents on that. And again, I don't know if other commissioners agree.
For me on 2 versus 3, I sorry, I forget who specifically suggested it. Might have been Chairwoman Cole. What is the formal rationale behind deviating from the guidance? Is it that we're just worried about removing parking point blank, or is it that we just don't think that 155 feet is necessary for reasons around the speed limit? Or is, I mean, yeah, I'm wondering, like, we have a guidance that when we do deviate from, we should at least have a rationale on why we think that, you know, it's not necessary in the circumstance.
I think I might look at it a little bit differently. I don't know if I'm just a bit concerned that we're starting to take this 155 feet and interpreting it as what should be done when we can't apply that standard everywhere in the city. So in this case, I think maybe you and I have a slightly different tolerance level for, quote, sort of deviating. I don't consider it deviating from the standard as much as I look at this particular site, and I don't see that we need to deviate, remove 3 parking spaces, especially with this 15 feet on either side of the hydrant. And I believe that the March 25th City Council meeting, when I listened to the discussion at that meeting, I felt like we need to approach these parking removals with a bit of a cautious hand, because we just, people do need parking, and I want to look at every request as, do we really need to remove this space? If others don't agree, I totally understand, and we can just approve all 3 spaces, et cetera, for a variety of different reasons that other commissioners may have. But for me, I'm going to be looking at these parking removal requests. Each one is this really needed? I really want to make sure it is.
Can I ask another question about this motion that we're working on? You mentioned that along Valparaiso, that there are a number of, we know that there are a number of driveways, and that the city council has asked that we kind of look at the whole length of Valparaiso going forward. Does that need to be part of the motion, or is that just a thing that's already going to happen?
Right.
So you're just looking for us to support these recommendations?
Just
or-
those 4, correct?
Okay.
Yep.
Does anybody have a motion to that effect?
I will move that we support the 4 recommendations as written, because see if anybody seconds it.
So we do have a motion and a second on the table. Any discussions, last minute discussions that would like to take place before we take a vote?
Sorry, to clarify, so the three spaces will be removed in that motion.
Right now, the
Okay.
motion is just support. So I take that as in, we'll go ahead and remove all three. But if there's any additional direction, then let me know. But right now, the motion on the table is recommending all the locations there for 3 spaces for Campbell.
But I thought that earlier you said we would approve 3, but you would execute 2.
That's right now not part of the motion. That's why
So
I
we
wanted
have-
to,
we have-
that's why I brought up if there's any additional conversation that wants to take place, but
Okay,
Yeah.
I would like to amend the motion. Is that possible? You.
So I think technically the mover would have to accept your amendment.
right, the
Um,
first and the second would both have to accept that amendment in order for the amendment,
I think I prefer something that's really, really simple because the idea of like, we'll approve 3 just in case, but it's like, but we're
It may
gonna,
come down to more analysis for that option.
yeah, okay.
so
I
was
have
it
little
a
bit of
question?
concern
or-
that we
All
run
right,
into-
I have one more question. So in this 3-space equation, one piece of the discussion has been about expanding the red paint that is in front of the hydrant, if that is a necessary thing. If the extra hydrant, like, I guess when I'm asking about 3 spaces, is that amount of paint that's coming from the hydrant, is that a portion of these spaces? Or is it that extra paint plus 3 parking spaces?
It will be 2 spaces, including, and the 2 spaces that we're talking about would have the red curb that is extended as a result of the hydrant. Because again, for us, it's the distance that we're looking for. Whether or not that distance now has 2 extra future feet or not, that's already part of the conversation.
But it's, the question is the distance from where? The distance from the
From
actual
where
red
the-
we see or the appropriate red that should be there?
From the red that we see now. That's because that's the analysis that we've done. We assume where the red ends now, that's the beginning of the first space. So therefore, the extension that we're talking about is now part of that two-car space. For us, that doesn't matter. We're looking at the 2-car space.
And maybe if this might help, like the spaces are, right, it's an estimate. So think about it as like the distance from where the vehicle is to where they have a clear line of sight. That distance is fixed, right? And the amount of red curb you put in, whether it's fire hydrant or otherwise, is the amount of red curb you put in. So it's kind of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, but the distance is fixed.
I kind of feel like we have engineers who look at this stuff for a reason, and I agree that this council wants us to approach this with discretion. But I also look at the kind of vehicles that are parking there, and they are not as easy to see through and around. And I feel like if our engineers are making a recommendation of 52 feet there, that doesn't seem crazy to me to go with it. Especially, I mean, I don't think we should, I don't like the idea of, harassing people who are living in their vehicles. But I also don't like the idea of there being accidents. And I don't know, it feels a little weird to second guess for me personally, the work that our staff have done.
I don't believe I'm second guessing anything.
One other question I had is also I thought came up in the discussion around that Campbell is not full, right? Like that there are other places along that road where there are still spaces available, or are all those spaces pretty much taken up all the time? And that's why we can't move one.
Right, yeah, so we made some observations. Campbell is not completely full, right? To answer your question,
So that one extra car can probably find a space.
probably.
So the question is, do we want a friendly amendment that allows for fewer parking removals? Or do we vote on the motion in front of us? And then if it fails, we have another one? Is that how that goes?
That's correct. So right now we have a motion and a second on the table. There's a friendly amendment. I don't believe the amendment is being accepted here. So what we do, we'll vote, see how the vote goes, and then we'll go from there. But the vote right now will be on recommendation, accepting the recommendation in this case, as it is. Does that make sense? And if so, I'm gonna go ahead and make a roll call.
Since we don't have visibility to Commissioner Silverstein,
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh,
do we have
yes.
visibility, like physical
Let
visibility?
me go ahead and stop sharing and you should be able to see him at that point. There we go. Okay, so just to reiterate, we do have a motion by Commissioner Baruzzi and a second by Commissioner Coleman to accept staff's recommendation as is. So if you would like to vote yes, if you can please raise your hand. And then, so I'm seeing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm seeing 5 votes, 5 yes votes. And then for Chair Coe and Commissioner King, are you abstaining or a no vote in this case?
No.
No? Okay. So we do have 5 yes votes and 2 no votes. And in this case, then the motion passes as is. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, I think we can move on to the next topic.
Informational items. Under informational items, city staff provides an update on matters of importance to the commission. Informational items are not action items. However, a commissioner, city staff member, or a member of the public may request to make a comment or ask a question on any of the informational items. The one informational item tonight is F1, update on major project status. Kevin, can you update us?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Just a few updates on ongoing projects. So first one is the county's Coleman and Ringwood Avenue, the transportation study. Some of you are fairly familiar with that project. I did send an email out earlier before the meeting, letting you know that there is an online survey the county is conducting. So for those of you that are interested in the project, or if you know someone that's interested in the project, I highly recommend that you share that information with your colleagues, your neighbors, etc. So I don't believe there's a due date on there yet, but I'm going to try to find out exactly when it's due. But the sooner the survey is complete, the better, obviously.
Kevin, do you know
Yes.
how many responses they've gotten so far?
I don't, but I can find out. Yeah. The second one is the just for the quiet zone for some of you that is following that project. So we are anticipating to release the design RFP, so request for proposal, sometime in the summer. And then the way that, as some of you remember, we essentially have the funding to do design for 2 crossings. So that's kind of how we're proceeding with the RFP. Moving on to a few other more citywide initiatives, the local safety plan that was mentioned a little bit earlier. We do have plans to do some outreach in the kind of the summer, fall season. So in the next few months or so, once we have those information solidified, we'll share that with the commission here. The shuttle program evaluation study. So this is kind of a citywide study of the shuttle program. The study just got kickstarted and they are working on the existing conditions right now. But we do have an eye towards some community events in the near future as well. So, and then finally, from a regional standpoint, I just wanted to kind of quickly point out that Caltrain, so the train service, they are doing a corridor crossing strategy. It's basically kind of their effort of doing a more holistic look on all the crossings along the peninsula. And one of the things that they highlight on their website is that all the logo efforts are still going on, right? So nothing is being impacted from a logo standpoint. This is strict, their view of looking at the network more holistically and gathering all the information, all the different efforts that local agencies are doing for the entire corridor. So for those of you that are interested, obviously, I think that would be a cool document to kind of follow as well. So with that, I will conclude my update.
Kevin, can you provide an update on the status of removing that cypress tree or getting it trimmed back on Roadland?
Yeah, I believe we have contacted co-enforcement about it. My understanding that is that they have reached out to the property owner and they're conversing about the effort necessary. So it is in the process.
Yeah,
I
because
don't believe it's been removed yet because I think I got the email a couple of days ago that they are
okay,
working on
because
it.
I go by there a lot and
Yeah.
I definitely think it's an issue. I did originally, but I continue to think so.
Okay.
Kevin, I have a quick question about the Ravenswood striping.
Yes, thank you.
Now, I might be, I left town for like 4 days, so I might have missed something really exciting. But in the initial repaving, one of the whatever, is it westbound bike lane? That one seemed to clearly continue operating as a bike lane, but the eastbound bike lane just disappeared. Is it coming back soon with paint? Because it became 2 lanes of traffic all the way back to the train tracks when it was repaved.
The bike lane will be, so there will be a new bike lane in the eastbound direction, so heading towards Middlefield as part of the project. Yeah, I actually walked that site this morning to double check the striping. So yeah, there will be a bike lane there. Thank you for the reminder. We should have striping by the end of this week at the latest.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. Does anybody have any more questions? Patrick, please call for public comments on this item.
Thank you, Chair. If you do have a public comment and you would like to provide it remotely, please just raise your virtual hand or press *9. We do have a public comment. The public speaker is Randy Avalos.
Good evening, all. Randy Avalos, District 5. Just kind of related to informational items. I'd suggest everybody take a look at those flock cameras that were proposed in City Council meeting the other night. They're more than just license plate cameras. There is some interesting issues with machine learning models and it profiling cars, pedestrians, and bicyclists. So if you have the chance to check that out, read ACLU articles about it, because it's going to affect our streets and our citizens. Take care.
Thank you for your comment. Let's see. Are there any subcommittee reports or updates?
Chair Sebrian, sorry to interrupt you. It looks like we do have one more public commenter.
Sorry.
It's quite all right. Virginia Portillo, you're now the public speaker.
Hi, good evening. I'm from District 1 and I just wanted to just kind of emphasize if you guys taking walks around the city in regards to street painting and all that stuff. Can you guys take a walk in the Bellhaven community and just check out, the striping that you guys have on the roads, the streets along over here. Also, speeding is something notorious that happens in this area. So maybe, it would be great to have, speedometers around here and all that good stuff. So thank you so much.
Thank you for your comment.
I believe that is all the public commenters that we have, so I will return the meeting back to the chair.
Okay, now do we have subcommittee reports or updates? All right, well, hearing nothing, I will adjourn the meeting at 8:13. 8:13.
Great, thank you. Have a good night, everyone.